Hi everybody, welcome back to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel. Before we kick off with today's review, really bit of exciting news. The Eastfield Gunroom website will be live in the next 48 hours, so do have a look for that. The details are on the bottom of the screen, and by all means give any sort of feedback, any comments regarding the website, because that's what we need to hear, and we're excited to see what you guys think of it. On to today's review. In stark contrast to what we normally do, bearing in mind we've done some rare miracles, we've done a very rare shadow skeet gun. But what you remember is, on many of the videos, I always say, if you've got a particular review you want to see, get in touch, tell me what it is. And this particular gun, we've had several requests for. So I thought, not a problem. It's a very popular gun. It's a superb piece of kit, certainly for clay shooting. So let's get one and let's have a look at it. Today we are doing the Beretta 682 Gold E. The 682 Gold E story, if you like, starts back in the late 1990s. So I always try and add a little bit of history into these reviews, whether you like it or not. And if you look historically back to the sort of the 1980s, then the Beretta 682 was the first really popular and successful competition gun that Beretta ever made. The 682 came out in about 1984-ish, something like that. So throughout the 1980s, it was a very popular gun, won no end of titles. The most famous British guy I can think of that shot it of extremely high level in sporting was Barry Simpson. And the 682 carried on until the 682 Gold, which was about 1995, which was a very similar gun with a few aesthetic changes. And by the time they got to almost up to the millennium, the gun itself was a little bit jaded in terms of appearance. Still a really good gun. People were going out week in, week out. Very solid, reliable, nice handling, smooth shooting gun. But I think at the time, the price point was quite key, and I think that sales started to drop off. And as with what happens with a lot of shotgun manufacturers, they just decided to give it a revamp. Now, what's interesting with the 682 Gold E was not only it was a revamp, but it was also very different in terms of the mechanics and the specification of the gun. And what they did to start off is they actually slimmed down the action by a couple of mil. And what that did is it changed the ergonomics, the handling, the balance of the shotgun. And alongside that, there was technology changes in the barrels. So Beretta went from the old mobile choke system, which was coupled with standard nominal bore 18.4 millimeter barrels, and they went over to a revolutionary at the time Optima choke system. So what that did is it made the bores were oversized, so they are actually 734, which is 5 thou bigger than the previous model 682 barrels. So longer chokes and longer forcing cones. Ballistically, that made for a much smoother shooting shotgun. It gave better patterns, and it kind of also put them in line with Browning at the time, who were already using their Invector Plus system, which I think from memory had come out certainly on their autos about 3 years prior to that. So they changed the barrels, they changed the action, but what they also did is they massively changed the aesthetics of this gun. The 682 Gold, which again is a gun we will absolutely look at, firm favourite of mine, we will be looking at one of those on this channel, was a very plain, it was a greystone action with a little bit of gold embellishments. And it looked like a competition gun. It was sleek. It was, matte finish barrels. Really looked the part, because historically, a lot of competition guns are quite plain. You look at Praxis, DT11s, that kind of stuff, DT10s, because it's not about the aesthetics. It's not about the engraving. It's about what the gun does and how it performs, which is why a lot of them, like I say, historically are quite plain. So what they did at Beretta is they ramped things up. And what they went for straight away was a nickel finish action. Now, up until that point, if you purchased a Beretta of any kind of 6.8 series finish, it would have had like a coin finish. But they did start to use a nickel finish on the Silver Pigeon range just prior to this gun. And I can only assume from a coating point of view that it made it more impervious to rust, etc. And if you look at this, for example, I think this is a 2009 shotgun. It's certainly worn very well, and there's no signs of any kind of rust, corrosion, etc. Just as a case in point. So what they did is they put these ellipsis style graphics on. Now, this gun came out not long after the 686E had a revamp. So the 686E is kind of the entry level clay shooting gun, and the 682 Goldie was the next step up. Like I said, only available in trap, skeet, and sport specifications. It was an out and out clay munch, and that's all it was designed to do. So the Goldie was kind of modeled slightly on the 686E, and what they did is they put these ellipsis style graphics on. Now, to this day, I don't know what ellipsis style graphics are, but it's kind of these hoopy, ringy things that look like it might be rings of a planet or something like that. But at the time, you just didn't see that kind of thing on a gun, and it was really kind of, whoa. Now, the first Goldie I can ever remember seeing, I was exhibiting, shall we say, at Weston Park Game Fair, and I think it was probably back in 1999. We've got a couple that had just arrived from GMK, and literally within 10 minutes of us opening the stand, someone had come on and gone, that's the new Beretta, I want the new Beretta, because it did look really, really modern for its age, for its period when it came out. So alongside the ellipsis style graphics, you've got this very, very neat, understated bits of gold. So you've got the Beretta Trident logo on the bottom with these kind of laurel leaves. Again, I think that denotes some kind of Olympic pedigree, competition kind of thing, along with the term Beretta 682 Goldie, and you've got a little bit of gold on the side and also on the bottom of the action. As a gun, it looked different to pretty much everything that was on the market at the time. And because the 682 had got such a huge following worldwide as being, like I said, an out-and-out clay muncher, it was a big hit straight away. On top of the changes to the action, like I say, we slimmed it down, they changed the barrel configuration, they still use the 10x8 sporting rib, incidentally. There were also changes to the woodwork. Now, with the 682 Gold, which was the previous model, you would have got a very slight palm swell. But what Beretta did is they accentuated the palm swell a little bit more, and also they came in with this laser cut kind of fish scale checkering. Now, I'm not, and I've never been a fan of that checkering, but at the time, people, again, it was all about doing something different. Shotgun manufacturers are very much up against the wall in terms of things stagnating, and Beretta, having been there 40, 50 times to the factory, spend millions and millions of euros on R&D, and you can bet your bottom dollar by the time something comes to market from Beretta, it is always as good as it can possibly be. Talk about the bores. Okay, 734 Optima extended chokes. Now, the early ones came with plastic bands on the chokes, and the later ones then changed to metal. So let's just talk about, like I said, the specification these guns were available in. We'll start with skeet. So they did an Olympic skeet gun, which was 28-inch barrels with a floating rib, non-selective trigger, skeet and skeet choke. And it's funny because even though this gun has been out of production for a number of years now, if you watch the Olympics, you will still see 682 Goldie skeet guns being used. Likewise, in the trap, you'll still see some in the double trap discipline sometimes, because they did a standard rib trap gun, they did a multi-choke trap gun later on, but also they did ZZ guns, which have got a slightly ramped rib, and they also did the Goldie X trap, which was a real big brute of a thing, step rib, Monte Carlo adjustable stock. And again, if you go on the trap circuit today, and in all fairness, in the UK, unless you speak to people that shoot Olympic trap, Berettas aren't that popular a choice for trap shooters, but you do still tend to see the occasional 682 Goldie X trap. And I think that's because, we live in a generation where people do like high ribs, and they do like the Monte Carlo stock because it gives them the more head up position. And, wherever you go on a Sunday morning, you will see these guns. They are still being used countrywide, worldwide. And particularly in this part of the country, we're kind of in Staffordshire in the Midlands, huge following for sporters. And they were available they actually did a 28-inch sporter, 30 and 32-inch. Fixed comb, adjustable comb. If you take away the developments in terms of the barrel boring, the action, reduction in the thickness, and the funky checkering, if you like, it is essentially a 680 Beretta, and they just work. They are absolutely bulletproof. Still very, very popular today. They sold an awful lot of these guns worldwide right up until 2012-13, which is when it was replaced by the 692. But in the 14-15 years it was available, it was an absolute bestseller, and it still has a huge following today, because in terms of value for money now, and I've said this on previous videos, shotguns are just getting so expensive because of raw materials, shipping, freight, Brexit, whatever you want to blame. Stuff like these secondhand 10-15 years old now offer absolute cracking value for money, whether you're starting the sport off or you're progressing and you want to buy a proper clay gun. Because when I use the phrase proper clay gun, it is, like I said, designed to go and shoot clays every day of the week. If you bought another 680 version of this, like a Silver Pigeon 3, etc., you wouldn't get the palm swell, you wouldn't get the adjustable trigger, which is something we're gonna touch on. And on top of that, from a presentation point of view, right from day one, this was one of the first Berettas that came in a really nice kind of airline approved case with combination locks, which we've got here. This gun is completely unaltered, so if you find one that's all original, you will get yourself a native choke box with some extended optima chokes. And we talked about the metal bands, so each colour denotes a different choke, and with a Sporty you will get cylinder, skeet, quarter, half and 3/4. Full chokes are also available. And even though this is a clay gun, it's not what I would call a crossover gun, because I think it looks a bit too much like a competition gun. But there's nothing to stop you going and shooting pheasants with this. They handle very well because of the overboring. They're very low on recoil. They're a nice, smooth gun to shoot. I've shot several of these over the years. Probably owned a couple, I forget now. The one thing I would point out, though, is on this particular gun, and it's all original, it's got the leather-faced recoil pad. Now, from a recoil reduction point of view, that doesn't really do anything, but these are compatible with the later style and modern Beretta microcoil recoil pads, which would be my choice if you wanted to reduce the recoil and make it shoot a bit smoother. So as well as the chokes in the case, you got a spares kit. You got a spare trigger, so you've got a thin straight trigger versus the one that's on the gun at the minute, which is slightly right-handed, just for a better feel when you put your finger on it. Spare beads, in fact, and a screwdriver to adjust the trigger and change the length of pull. Like I said, this was a requested review. There are hundreds, probably there's thousands of these out there. They are not an uncommon gun at all. But what they are is they're a really, really good gun. I regularly get people contacting me from places like Cyprus in particular. They're very, very popular over there. Quite often we supply the guys in Cyprus with 682 Goldie Berettas. And I just thought it was a nice review to do, to be the first Beretta to kick us off, because so far we haven't even talked about Beretta. And there's so many good ones out there which we will be looking at in the future, regardless of whether it's a common gun or something like a rare limited edition. And massive company, oldest manufacturing company in the world, Beretta. It's over 500 years old, and they make some ridiculously good shotguns. Now, there will be people out there who, and I've met dozens of them, don't get me wrong, and they will make the comment that the newer Berettas aren't made as well as they used to, and some argue this is the last of the good Berettas. But what you've got to take into consideration with things like that is that Beretta now manufacture on an enormous scale where they didn't used to before, and they're using different materials and they're using different manufacturing methods, and because of that, things change, and it's as simple as that. So, I mean, I wouldn't say that the older Berettas are any better than the new Berettas. I just think that that the older ones have certainly, without a doubt, got a huge following. Only this week, I was trying to find a customer, a really nice old 686 Sporter from sort of 1992, 93. His comment was, "Matthew, I had one years ago. I wish I'd never sold it. You're the man to find me one." Trying to find one in really good condition because they've been shot and loved is virtually impossible. So again, I keep reiterating when we do these reviews, if there's a particular gun you've always wanted to own and you come across it in the right kind of condition, just buy it, because all you'll do is you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what if. And you know, a case in point, like I said, is this guy with the 686, and they're not easy to find. And particularly with Goldies, I've seen dozens and dozens that have been pretty much shot out. This one's not shot out. This is a very nice example. One thing I haven't yet talked about, apart from the checkering, is the style of the wood. Now, on a 682 Goldie, which is as the same as a 692, 694, Beretta use what they call grade 2.5 wood. So it's not as higher grade as what you'll get on a DT10, DT11, or a 687 EEL, but it's still largely very nicely figured. However, wood is subjective. It varies massively. You know, looking at this piece of wood on this Beretta, on this Goldie here, I like it. It's very, very straight. We talked about a previous gun, I think it was the Marik G11, that straight grain is extremely good for low recoil. And what you've got to remember, this is a competition gun. So you will see a lot of guns of this kind of ilk with straight grain wood. Some people might think it looks a bit dull, but ultimately it makes for a much, much stronger, smoother shooting shotgun. Right, that's been the Beretta 682 Goldie requested review from me. At this moment in time, I will say, if you've got a request, please send it to me, email it, comment below. Tell me what you want to see, because that's what this channel is about. We want to keep making exciting, good content for you guys. So you need to tell me what you want to see, and I'll do my best to bring you those reviews. Please don't forget to keep liking and subscribing to the channel. And don't forget, the website will be out in a couple of days. So do please check that out, and I will welcome your feedback from that. That's been the Beretta 682 Goldie. I'll see you next time on Eastfield Gunroom. Thanks for watching. Cheers.